Joining us now is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Shipley, Philip Davies. Philip, do you think you or your colleagues might put their own communications out on issues such as the ECHR that might differentiate or differ from the main party?
Well, possibly. It wouldn't be the first time I've done that. I think I do that at every election, to be perfectly honest. So, look, I've always been against our membership of the European Convention on Human Rights. It's a complete waste of time, and the court's a joke, to be perfectly honest. I don't actually think this is massive news actually about the Prime Minister. It's certainly not a shock, because if anyone looks at the front of the Rwanda bill, any bill that the government brings forward, it has to make a commitment that it complies with the European Convention of Human Rights. Every bill has this certification on it before it's brought before the House of Commons. On the Rwanda bill, I'll read you what it says on the front of the Rwanda bill. It actually says, Secretary James Cleverly has made the following statement. I am unable to make a statement that, in my view, the provisions of the Safety of Rwanda Asylum and Immigration Bill are compatible with the Convention rights, but the government nevertheless wishes the House to proceed with the bill. So the government's already making clear that, in its view, the Rwanda bill is outside of the scope of the European Convention of Human Rights, but it's cracking on with it anyway. So I think the Prime Minister's already made it clear that he's not going to let the European Convention of Human Rights stop him dealing with illegal immigration.
That's a very good point. We were speaking to Stephen Pound, the former Labour MP, a little earlier in the show, and he was saying it wouldn't make the blindest bit of difference, really, to the Rwanda deportation plan getting out of the ECHR. He said it's our courts that are holding it up.
Yeah, and that's true. And Tom made the very good point earlier that actually we can just ignore the rulings from the European Court of Human Rights. They've got no mechanism for enforcing them, and perhaps we should be a bit more robust in doing that when they make stupid decisions, as they regularly do. So, you know, I don't really think this is massive news, but you know, I mean, I'm against the European Court of Human Rights. I think it's a joke court. We'd be better off out of it. But I don't think it's the be-all and end-all in terms of dealing with illegal immigration. And you might yourself put out a communication at the election saying that that you personally believe in withdrawing. Yeah, well, I've always made that clear. I've never hidden that view. So I'm quite happy to reiterate
well, we did originally.
I'm quite happy to reiterate it to anyone who asks.
Let's move on to this other big issue of today, though, because the Sentencing Council has suggested that judges should consider softer sentences for offenders from deprived or what they describe as challenging backgrounds. Should we soften up sentences for people based on the basis of their birth?
Now, this is completely unacceptable, Tom. It's an absolute outrage, to be perfectly honest. You've got 15 unelected, unaccountable members of the Sentencing Council, in effect the great and the good of the liberal elite in the legal profession, in effect deciding themselves under no basis whatsoever that they've decided that for a whole swathe of the population they can now get lighter sentences if you've experienced discrimination and you've had a negative experience of authority. I mean, what on earth does that mean? You know, basically, if you got told off by your teachers when you were 10 years old, does that mean you get a lighter sentence now? That you know, an earlier experience of being a looked after child? I mean, as people know, Esther was in care for the first part of her life. Should she get softer sentences because of that? Because she commits a crime now? It's all these things. They're patronising. And they're completely unacceptable. And they've lost the plot, these people at the Sentencing Council.
Well, you're not the only one to hit back. Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary, of course, he said the guidance is patronising too. He said it's inaccurate, risks making poor schooling and poverty excuses for offenders to commit further crimes. Do you think that this could almost encourage people to commit crimes? They might get a lesser sentence.
Yeah, well, look, I put in an objection to these proposals during the consultation, as did Alex Chalk, which they've completely ignored. But yes, I mean, you make a good point there, Emily, that actually this mitigation can be used every time somebody commits a crime. Even if it's the 35th time they've appeared in court, this mitigation will still be able to be used every single time. And it would apply to every crime as well. I mean, there are some people, I don't happen to agree with them, there are some people who say, well, look, if you're in deprivation and you commit shoplifting, that might be a mitigation that should be taken into consideration. I mean, I don't think it should, but some people might make that case. This applies to every single crime you commit. You know, you go along and stab somebody with a knife, wife or you rape somebody, you can use the fact that you live in deprivation or you had a negative experience of authority when you were younger to get a lighter sentence on the back of it. This is completely nuts, and these are political decisions, not legal decisions. And I would say to the 15 members of the Sentencing Council, many of them judges and lawyers, if they want to pursue this kind of policy, they can actually stand for election like the rest of us and make their argument to the electorate, not try and sneak in their left-wing political views through the back door because of the position that they've got. These are not people speaking as lawyers. They're speaking as lefties who are trying to pursue their own political agenda, and it's outrageous.
And yet, Philip, the Sentencing Council was established in 2010, albeit from the Labour government that legislated for it, but it was officially started working in 2010. If the Conservatives had been so irritated by this sort of structure that once Sir Keir Starmer himself sat upon and made rules through, if the Conservatives are really upset by these sort of liberal lawyers making all of these rules, why don't you change the structure? Why don't you abolish the Sentencing Council? Why don't we go back to how it was done before the Labour Party changed the rules?
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. I'd abolish the Sentencing Council tomorrow, to be perfectly honest. I might have that on my election literature as well, just to go the whole hog. But yeah, but I think this is massive overreach. I mean, they've never gone this far before. Well, you're right. This was a Blairite creation in 2003. It changed its name in effect in 2010 from the Sentencing Guidelines Council to the Sentencing Council. That's all it did really, was change its name. But yeah, I mean, this is completely unacceptable. This is complete overreach. Unless they get back down from this, I do genuinely think we are going to have to look at abolition of the Sentencing Council, because this is not acceptable in a democracy for people unelected and unaccountable to be making these kind of political decisions.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much indeed, Philip Davies. Always great to speak to you, MP for Shipley.